Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about new vehicle affordability, whether it's improving or not improving. But before we get into this video, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. We are going to start things off by going over an affordability report that was released by Cox Automotive. What they found in this report is that January of 2023 was the first month in the last 6 months where new car affordability actually got better. So new cars were more affordable in January than they have been over the course of the last 6 months, which is crazy. If you're running with the raw numbers, the average brand new car in January cost the equivalent of 44 work weeks, whereas in December, the average brand new car cost the equivalent of 44.7 work weeks. So we're finally trending downwards in terms of how much a new car costs compared to how much people are making. And speaking of people making, in January, average income increased by 0.6%, whereas average transaction price with new vehicles decreased by 0.6%. So people are made more money in January, and then they paid less money for cars in January compared to December, which is great news. And this actually leads into the car payment side of things. So the average car payment in January for a new car, $780 per month. Whereas if we compare that to December, which was $788 per month, that's, an improvement of $8 per month, which again, that doesn't sound like much, but it's at least in the proper direction, right? We want it to go down, not up. However, the average interest rate paid in January was 9.51%. That was an increase of 12 basis points over December. So despite the fact that on average, people in January paid a higher interest rate on cars, they actually had a lower payment because they got a big enough discount on the cars to offset the increase in interest rates, which that sounds like a win to me, right? However, the elephant in the room is a chart that's on this report. And since we don't do any fancy editing here, here's the chart for the video. So you guys can see with the chart, you just have this basically straight line across, and then it just goes sky high to the moon. And what this chart is how many weeks of income are required to buy a brand new car, again, for the average American. And this goes over the last decade. And what you can see with this chart is that over the last decade, on average, what we saw is that a brand new car on the low side of things would cost about 32-ish weeks of income. Yeah, it touched down to 32 weeks every so often. And then on the high side of things, it'd be like 36 weeks of income, but it usually hovered right around 34 weeks of income. So that's what the normal car market looks like, is that a brand new car is going to cost about 34 weeks of income for the average American. But then obviously it goes sky high. So by the middle of 2021, it was closer to 40 weeks. And then by the end of 2022, it was well over 44 weeks of income required to buy the average brand new car. And so although we are starting to trend downwards, we are nowhere near where we were historically in terms of new car affordability. So yes, new cars are more affordable today than they were yesterday. However, they are way, 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 way less affordable today compared to what they have been over the last decade. And so if you go into a dealership and you feel like the cars are all overpriced, you're not crazy. Like, this chart clearly shows that the average brand new car is way out of line in terms of expense compared to what the average American is making. Now, one thing that this report does not mention that I do think is important to mention for the situation is going to be unemployment. So currently, the unemployment rate is starting to increase. And the thing about the unemployment rate is there's a lot of arguments as to what the rate actually is, because the rate that we all see like on the headlines is basically the amount, and sorry if this is not a perfect definition, but it's basically the amount of people that have been looking for a job over the last 14 days. Like, it's a super short time period. It doesn't take into account people that, currently have a job and are, looking for more work, or people that have been out of work for maybe like a few months, for example. It's like this very niche group of people. And so if you actually dive into the different ways to calculate the unemployment rate, you can get obviously the figure that we see posted everywhere, but then also some other sources will say that it's closer to 6 or 7% once you take into account, the people that want extra work, the people that have been out of work for months or, maybe years, or the people that are trying to come back into the workforce. When it takes into account everything, it's a much higher rate. But the only thing that's important for this video is that alongside, this trend of car prices going down, we also have this trend of the unemployment rate increasing, which means that there's going to be fewer and fewer people in the market to buy a car, because if you don't have a job, like the last thing you're thinking about is buying a brand new car. You're probably worried more about, other things that are far more essential than a car purchase. And so I do also find it interesting that wages are increasing, but then also unemployment's increasing. That seems like those two wouldn't exist in the same environment, but I mean, that's apparently what we're seeing in our current economy. So in terms of what this report actually means, this shows that the car market is finally starting to correct itself, or rather the new car market, I should say, because the used car market did some weird stuff in January. Because again, we're finally starting to see prices come down, and not just, come down in terms of dealers discounting and, automakers releasing more rebates, but, the actual affordability of cars is starting to come down, as in they're becoming more affordable, which I think is a good sign, because this means that the car market is eventually going to get into a place where, it actually makes sense to purchase a new car, which would then help the used car market to start recorrecting itself again. Because part of the reason why the used car market has been acting so weird, especially over the sales month of January, is because of how high these new car prices are, because of how unaffordable new cars are. And so this whole situation should kind of fix itself. And so what I see happening moving forward is that we're only going to continue to see more and more dealer discounts, and we're going to see more incentives from automakers as cars are not selling. Now, obviously, this is going to be a case-by-case basis, dealership to dealership and automaker to automaker. Some dealerships are in regions where the market's still really hot, they don't have a lot of inventory, and so they have no reason to discount their inventory. And then there are other dealerships that are in the exact opposite situation, where they have tons of inventory, and so the only way they're going to sell cars is if they discount it. And then same thing with manufacturers. There's some manufacturers that they've basically gotten to a point where they have met pretty much all the demand they can meet, and so the only way they're going to move metal is if they start releasing incentives on their product. And so just don't expect this to be a uniform thing. Understand that with some automakers, you're going to see big discounts from the dealerships, and you're going to see big discounts from the automakers in the form of rebates. And other automakers, you're not going to see anything. You're still not going to see any discounts. If you, just some real world examples, if you want to go and buy a Ram 1500, yeah, you can get a big dealer discount, and it looks like Ram's finally starting to release some incentives on those trucks. But then if you want to go buy, the new Honda Pilot, for example, well, first off, you got to get in line, and you have to get in line to pay full MSRP, no discount, no rebate, nothing. So again, it's just going to depend on what you're looking at. And finally, how can you use all of this information to help you out as someone who is currently shopping for a car? So first off, understand that with certain, dealerships and with certain brands, the deals are only going to get better as the year progresses, because inventory is only going to increase, which means that the discounts are going to have to increase to offset the increase in inventory. And so I guess if you're looking at a brand that's a little bit more inventory heavy, then, waiting definitely has the potential for there to be a better deal down the road compared to what you could get today. However, on the flip side, with other brands, there is still so much pent-up demand that you're not really going to see the same effect. Again, we're in a market where everything's not going to be uniform. It's not all going to go in the same direction. And so you need to research into the brand and into the dealership that you're purchasing from to see if it's a situation where you could potentially get a better deal down the road, or if, today is the day to get the deal, because things are only going to get more expensive because maybe the dealership is sold out on a particular vehicle for the next year, and so the reason why it'd get more expensive is because the automaker is just going to keep jacking up the MSRP, because that is the trend that we've been seeing. Despite the fact that we are starting to see incentives from automakers, we're still seeing pretty consistent price increases. And so it's kind of a funny situation where automakers will be like, yeah, so we just increased the price in the vehicle by $500, but guess what, we got a $500 rebate. And it's like, so you basically didn't do anything for anyone. But just kind of expect that to be the trend. And so again, it's definitely a market where it's going to be a situation where you're going to have to do a little bit more research than what you have to do in a normal market. In a normal market, you can pretty much buy at any time of the year, and you'll be able to get a pretty decent deal on the product that you're purchasing. But in this market, it's a little bit more nuanced, that's for sure. And so I'd be patient. I would do your research, again, on the dealership and on the brand that you plan on purchasing from, so you can figure out the exact situation that you're in, again, with that dealership, with that brand, to see if it's worth waiting or if it's not worth waiting in this market. And I want you guys to let me know what you think is going to happen. Do you think that this trend with new cars becoming more affordable is going to continue? Or do you think that this is like a little blip downwards and then we're going to see another spike upwards where new cars are going to become even more expensive? And, there is an argument for that, because automakers are focusing more and more on building, luxury vehicles, because the luxury market, frankly, is still very hot. And so there is a chance that could happen if automakers keep focusing on building more and more luxury cars. Anyways, interested to hear what you guys have to say. See ya.